Welcome to Conspiracy Theories Podcast. I'm your host, Noah Smith. In today's episode, we're diving into one of the most mysterious objects ever spotted in Earth's orbit, an anomaly that predates modern satellites and has sparked decades of speculation. Is the so-called Black Knight satellite merely space debris, or could it be something far more advanced and far more ancient? A surveillance device, perhaps, left behind by extraterrestrials? Let's take a closer look. The story of the Black Knight satellite begins not with telescopes or rocket launches, but with whispers. Accounts scattered across decades that, when pieced together, form a chilling mosaic. Some trace its origins as far back as 1899, when none other than Nikola Tesla claimed to have received a strange repeating signal from outer space. Working in his Colorado Springs lab, Tesla was experimenting with early radio transmission when he reported intercepting a rhythmic electrical signal. He believed it came from intelligent life beyond Earth. At the time, the scientific community dismissed Tesla's claim as eccentric fantasy. But in hindsight, many theorists believe this may have been the first recorded contact with the Black Knight. As the 20th century progressed, technology advanced, and so did the observations. In the 1920s, Norwegian engineer Jürgen Hals reported similar radio echoes, known as long-delayed echoes, or LDEs, that couldn't be explained by natural causes. These echoes would sometimes return seconds after being sent, too long a delay to be bouncing off Earth's surface or atmosphere. Some theorists propose that these signals were being reflected back by an object in orbit, an object that shouldn't have existed in an era before man-made satellites. It wasn't until the late 1950s, during the dawn of the space race, that the mystery truly began to take shape. In 1954, 2 years before the launch of Sputnik, newspapers reported that both the United States and the Soviet Union had detected an unknown object orbiting Earth. These claims, reported in media outlets like the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and San Francisco Examiner, suggested a dark, erratic object circling the planet in a polar orbit. That's significant. Neither the U.S. nor the USSR had satellites capable of polar orbits at the time, and such an orbit would be optimal for observing every inch of the globe. For some, this was evidence of surveillance by something non-human. Then came the 1960s, and with them, the photograph that would cement the Black Knight legend. During the STS-88 space shuttle mission in 1998, NASA's first mission to assemble the International Space Station, astronauts captured images of a mysterious, dark object floating above Earth. The object was irregular in shape, tumbling slowly through space. NASA dismissed it as a thermal blanket lost during a spacewalk. But to many, the image was proof. Its angular, alien design and the shadow it cast against the planet below ignited speculation. Was this the same object Tesla had detected a century earlier? Over the decades, these events, Tesla's signal, the LDEs, early media reports, and satellite photographs, have been retroactively linked, forming the backbone of what's now called the Black Knight satellite conspiracy. Supporters argue that these aren't isolated incidents, but part of a long-term pattern: signals intercepted from space, strange objects tracked in orbit, and unexplained images buried in government archives. Together, they suggest that the Earth may have been under silent observation for far longer than we realize. As Cold War paranoia intersected with rapid technological progress, the Black Knight narrative gained traction. It became the perfect blend of mystery, science, and extraterrestrial intrigue. In a world suddenly racing toward the stars, the notion that something or someone was already watching us became not just plausible, but terrifyingly compelling. As the legend of the Black Knight satellite began to solidify in the public imagination, various individuals and organizations found themselves linked, directly or indirectly, to the evolving theory. Among the most prominent was Nikola Tesla, whose early experiments in wireless transmission in 1899 remain one of the earliest cited encounters. Though dismissed by mainstream science, Tesla's status as a misunderstood genius has made him a cult figure among conspiracy theorists. His claims of receiving an unnatural signal from deep space, long before radio astronomy or satellites existed, laid the groundwork for future suspicions. Tesla's supposed encounter with the signal was echoed by other researchers in the decades that followed. Scientists such as Guglielmo Marconi and Jürgen Haas also reported strange radio phenomena, often unexplained bursts or delayed echoes that didn't conform to known physics. Hals's long-delayed echo experiments in Norway became particularly important as they were among the first documented cases of signals behaving in ways that defied earthbound explanations. Though mainstream science eventually attributed these echoes to ionospheric anomalies, some theorists believe that the signals may have been bounced off a foreign object in orbit, one that had been circling the Earth for an unknown length of time. Another key figure was Duncan Lunan, a Scottish science writer and astronomer who in the 1970s proposed a theory that captured the imagination of the alternative science community. Lunan analyzed the long-delayed echo patterns and claimed that they formed a coded message. According to him, the signal contained a star map pointing to the Epsilon Boötis star system, located 210 light-years from Earth. He proposed that the message originated from an ancient alien probe placed in orbit around Earth thousands of years ago, a cosmic message in a bottle from a long-dead civilization. Though Lunan later withdrew his claim, it was too late. The idea had already become a foundational pillar in the Black Knight mythos. The media also played a pivotal role. In 1954, well before any satellite had officially reached orbit, UFO researcher Donald Keyhoe told newspapers that the U.S. Air Force was tracking 2 satellites of unknown origin. Keyhoe, a former Marine Corps major turned UFO advocate, claimed insider knowledge that further fueled the theory. While the Air Force denied his allegations, the seed had been planted. These reports were later picked up by major outlets, spreading the story across the nation and giving it an air of legitimacy. The involvement of Cold War-era military agencies only added to the mystery. With both the Soviet Union and the United States locked in a technological arms race, the notion of unidentified objects in space was more than just science fiction. It was a potential national security threat. Official denials and vague statements from space agencies did little to dispel public suspicion. Each new technological advancement, whether it was radar, telemetry, or satellite photography, seemed to provide more data and more questions. Even within NASA, conflicting accounts emerged. While the agency officially dismissed the strange object photographed during STS-88 as space debris, some insiders hinted at classified knowledge, off-the-record remarks that only deepened the shadows. Former astronauts and engineers occasionally gave cryptic interviews, neither confirming nor fully denying the presence of unexplained phenomena during missions. This ambiguity allowed theorists to project their suspicions onto official silence. As these figures, scientists, military personnel, journalists, and researchers, intersected with a growing body of unexplained data, the narrative of the Black Knight satellite evolved from a fringe curiosity into a multi-generational mystery. It became a lens through which many viewed the intersection of science, secrecy, and the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. Each new figure brought with them their own piece of the puzzle, whether they realized it or not. And slowly, the pieces began to fit together. The core of the Black Knight satellite conspiracy rests on a set of recurring claims and pieces of evidence that, while individually ambiguous, collectively create an intricate and provocative narrative. Chief among them is the persistent assertion that an unidentified object has been orbiting Earth for at least 13,000 years, far predating any human-made satellite or known civilization capable of such technological feats. This claim is rooted in a statement frequently attributed to early UFO researchers who cited anomalous radar tracking and unexplained signals long before the space age began. One of the most prominent pieces of alleged evidence is the photograph taken during the STS-88 mission in 1998. As astronauts aboard the Endeavour space shuttle worked to assemble the first modules of the International Space Station, one of the cameras captured a series of images showing a dark, irregular object drifting over Earth. The object appears large and angular, with a shape that does not resemble any known piece of space debris. NASA eventually identified it as a thermal blanket lost during a spacewalk. However, conspiracy theorists argue that the object's precise geometry, shadowing, and the way it appears to hover in orbit do not match that explanation. To many, The image is the smoking gun, a visual confirmation of an artificial, unidentified satellite. Radio anomalies form another central pillar. Tesla's early claims were followed by reports of long-delayed echoes, most notably from the experiments conducted in the 1920s by Jürgen Haas. These echoes returned seconds after transmission, far too delayed to be standard atmospheric reflections. Theorists suggest the signals may have been intercepted, stored, and rebroadcast by an orbiting entity. Some even go so far as to claim that the pattern of delays in the echoes could be decoded into a message, supporting Duncan Lunan's controversial theory that the satellite was placed in orbit by extraterrestrials from the Epsilon Botis system. Orbital tracking data adds to the mystery. In the early 1960s, the United States military reported the detection of a mysterious object in a polar orbit, an unusual trajectory at the time, as neither superpower had yet launched a satellite capable of maintaining that kind of path. Polar orbits allow for complete coverage of Earth's surface, suggesting a surveillance purpose. While the object was eventually designated as part of the Discoverer satellite program, a cover for a classified reconnaissance mission, many believe this explanation was retrofitted to obscure the truth. Conspiracy theorists argue that the object's appearance and behavior did not match the known specifications of any contemporary spacecraft. Further claims come from amateur astronomers who report periodic sightings of an unusual object in low Earth orbit. Unlike conventional satellites that reflect sunlight in predictable ways and follow consistent orbital paths, this object is said to exhibit irregular motion, sudden changes in velocity, and an unusually dark surface that absorbs rather than reflects light, traits inconsistent with any known human technology. There are also claims that during solar storms, the black night emits strange radio frequencies, static-like noise with periodic pulses that sound artificial to trained ears. While no scientific consensus supports these interpretations, radio enthusiasts and ham operators have documented these anomalies and circulated them within UFO and conspiracy circles for decades. Taken together, visual evidence, historical radar tracking, unexplained signals, and anomalous orbital data, these claims form a framework that defies simple dismissal. While each piece alone may be inconclusive, the cumulative weight suggests something anomalous has been observed in Earth's orbit, something that resists conventional classification. For believers, it is not a matter of if the black night exists, but why it is there, and who or what put it there in the first place. To truly evaluate the claims surrounding the black night satellite, one must scrutinize the so-called evidence through a more rigorous lens. The STS-88 photograph is perhaps the most circulated piece of visual proof, but closer analysis reveals a more mundane possibility. According to official NASA records, the object in the photos is a thermal blanket that accidentally drifted away during a mission-related EVA, extravehicular activity. Video footage from the same mission appears to show the blanket being lost, its tumbling motion and erratic orbit matching what is later captured in still images. Critics argue that the blanket's irregular shape and the lighting conditions in space contribute to its strange appearance. High contrast shadows and the absence of atmospheric diffusion make objects in low Earth orbit appear far more alien than they are. From this standpoint, what seems like an intelligently designed satellite could be nothing more than a harmless piece of discarded insulation. Further complicating the matter is the origin and interpretation of radio signals. Tesla's claim from 1899 lacks any verifiable data. His notes and lab recordings don't offer specifics on the exact signal or its properties. While it's possible he encountered a unique electromagnetic anomaly, it's equally plausible that early wireless equipment was susceptible to interference or misinterpretation. Similarly, the long-delayed echoes recorded by Jürgen Haas and other early radio pioneers, though curious, have been studied extensively. Several scientific models now suggest that these could be caused by complex interactions within the ionosphere, particularly during periods of high solar activity. While not definitively explained, they do not necessarily require the presence of an artificial satellite to account for the delays. Duncan Lunan's decoded message from Epsilon Botis is another case where critical analysis is revealing. Though imaginative and compelling, his conclusion was based on subjective pattern recognition and involved significant extrapolation from ambiguous data. Lunan himself later distanced from his original interpretation, citing methodological flaws and the potential for confirmation bias. In other words, the message might not be a message at all, but rather a coincidental arrangement of delayed echoes that, when filtered through human imagination, seemed meaningful. The polar orbit detection reported in the 1960s adds a geopolitical layer to the mystery. While it's true that polar orbits were technologically challenging at the time, they were not impossible. The object detected was eventually linked to Discoverer of 8, part of the Corona Reconnaissance Satellite program run by the CIA. Initially shrouded in secrecy, the program used polar orbits specifically to gather photographic intelligence over the Soviet Union. Declassified records from the late 1990s confirmed the existence and capabilities of these satellites, casting doubt on the claim that the orbiting object was of unknown origin. Even the anecdotal reports from amateur astronomers lack consistency. The orbital characteristics described in online forums and old newsletters often can conflict with known physics. Satellites do not change speed or direction spontaneously. Objects in low Earth orbit are governed by Newtonian mechanics and subject to predictable decay due to atmospheric drag. An object exhibiting sudden course changes would either defy known science or be misidentified. In many cases, what amateur astronomers report may be misidentified space junk, upper rocket stages, or optical illusions caused by Earth's atmospheric conditions. The supposed signals emitted during solar storms are similarly ambiguous. Solar activity causes intense bursts of electromagnetic radiation that can interfere with radio communications globally. Distorted audio, clicking sounds, and pulses are common during these storms, and many radio enthusiasts mistake them for intentional broadcasts. No verifiable source has ever traced these signals to a specific object in orbit. When viewed critically, much of the evidence supporting the Black Knight theory appears circumstantial, misinterpreted, or explainable through conventional science. However, for many, the inconsistencies in the official explanations are just as telling as the anomalies themselves. It's not necessarily the presence of irrefutable proof that fuels belief, but the nagging sense that not all of the truth has been told. While proponents of the Black Knight satellite theory see a compelling tapestry of clues pointing toward an ancient alien artifact, skeptics and mainstream scientists interpret the same data through a far more grounded lens. From their perspective, the story of the Black Knight is not evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, but rather a reflection of how myths can form when uncertainty intersects with imagination, misinformation, and scientific illiteracy. One of the strongest arguments from skeptics is the lack of consistent, verifiable observational data. Despite decades of advancement in astronomy, space surveillance, and satellite tracking, no recognized space agency or independent observatory has confirmed the continuous presence of an unexplained object matching the characteristics attributed to the Black Knight. Organizations like NORAD and the European Space Agency maintain detailed catalogs of every object in Earth's orbit, over 20,000 tracked pieces, including active satellites, defunct spacecraft, and debris. Yet nowhere in these records exists any reference to a persistent, non-identified object in a polar orbit behaving outside known physical laws. In response to the infamous STS-88 photographs, NASA provided detailed mission logs and video footage showing the sequence of events that led to the loss of the thermal blanket. Engineers explained how the blanket came loose during insulation work and began tumbling away, its irregular motion captured later by the shuttle's cameras. From the agency's perspective, the case was closed. However, many conspiracy theorists dismiss this explanation as a cover-up, arguing that the object looked too sophisticated to be insulation. Skeptics counter this by emphasizing the importance of context. Images taken in the vacuum of space under extreme lighting conditions can make mundane objects appear bizarre or even artificial. The idea that Tesla received extraterrestrial signals is also viewed through a skeptical lens. Historians of science argue that Tesla's claim likely stemmed from a misinterpretation of atmospheric noise or distant lightning discharges. phenomena not well understood at the time. The radio technology Tesla used was rudimentary and lacked modern filtering capabilities. It's also worth noting that Tesla never publicly described the signal in technical detail, making it impossible to analyze his claim with scientific rigor today. The long-delayed echo phenomenon has been a subject of scientific inquiry, but there's no consensus that it requires a satellite or alien source. Various natural explanations have been proposed, including signal reflection off layers of charged particles in the ionosphere or even the moon. These reflections can produce echoes delayed by several seconds, especially during heightened solar activity. No credible scientific body has ever validated the claim that these echoes form an intentional message. Skeptics also point out the psychological element in belief formation. Human brains are hardwired to recognize patterns, even where none exist. This tendency, known as apophenia, can lead individuals to draw connections between unrelated events. Combine this with confirmation bias, where people seek out information that supports their beliefs while ignoring contradicting data, and a compelling conspiracy can take root without a foundation in fact. Fringe theories thrive in information vacuums, moments where data is sparse, explanations are lacking, or events occur behind closed doors. The Cold War created fertile ground for such ideas, with military secrecy, rapid technological change, and a pervasive fear of the unknown. Stories like the Black Knight thrive not necessarily because they are true, but because they are hard to disprove and emotionally resonant. To critics, the Black Knight is not an alien probe, but a case study in how conspiracy theories evolve, beginning with a misunderstood event, growing through speculation, and solidifying through repetition. While they don't deny that anomalies in space exist, space is full of mysteries, they argue that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and to date, that evidence remains elusive. Beyond questions of evidence and skepticism, the Black Knight satellite conspiracy has tapped into something deeper, something that transcends science and ventures into the realm of cultural symbolism, psychological resonance, and philosophical unease. At its core, the theory reflects a broader human preoccupation with surveillance, hidden knowledge, and the idea that we are not alone. It plays on primal fears and enduring archetypes, the watcher in the sky, the unknown presence just beyond the veil of awareness. The idea of a sentinel orbiting Earth for thousands of years touches on one of our oldest instincts, the suspicion that we are being observed. Across cultures and time periods, myths have described gods or celestial beings keeping watch over humanity from above. In modern times, these myths have evolved into narratives about satellites, drones, and artificial intelligences. The Black Knight, in this sense, becomes a modern mythic symbol, an omnipresent eye in the sky that predates even our ability to understand it. This narrative intersects powerfully with the societal anxieties about surveillance. In the age of global intelligence networks, facial recognition, and digital tracking, the fear of being watched has become a collective psychological undercurrent. The Black Knight theory takes that anxiety and projects it into the stars, suggesting not just governmental oversight, but cosmic observation. If something alien has been monitoring Earth for millennia, then our history, beliefs, and even self-perception may not be entirely our own. It implies a hidden hand guiding, studying, or possibly manipulating human development. In psychological terms, this theory aligns with what is often described as ontological insecurity, a feeling that one's sense of reality is vulnerable or incomplete. Conspiracy theories often provide a sense of structure in a chaotic world, especially those that imply a greater intelligence is orchestrating events behind the scenes. For believers, the Black Knight is not just a satellite. It is proof that life on Earth is part of a broader, possibly more meaningful cosmic narrative. This can offer a kind of existential comfort, however unsettling it may be. Better to be watched than to be utterly alone in a vast, indifferent universe. Culturally, the theory has also served as a mirror for technological distrust. As space exploration has become increasingly corporatized and militarized, many people feel distanced from the skies above. The Black Knight serves as a wild card in this narrative, an anomaly that reminds us there are still things beyond the control of governments and billionaires. It represents a space-age version of the trickster, an entity that defies classification, resists ownership, and challenges official narratives. Art, fiction, and media have further embedded the Black Knight into popular culture. Its mysterious form and ambiguous origins have inspired countless documentaries, novels, and science fiction films. From stories of ancient astronauts to secret alien surveillance programs, the image of an unexplainable object circling Earth has become a compelling backdrop for stories that question the very fabric of reality. It's not just a conspiracy, it's a symbol. More than a question of fact or fiction, the Black Knight satellite has become a vessel for human curiosity, suspicion, and imagination. It represents a convergence of mythology and modernity, a 21st century legend that sits at the intersection of science, fear, and hope. And whether it exists as a tangible object or a psychological construct, its presence in the collective imagination is undeniable. It taps into something timeless, the suspicion that we are being watched, not just by governments or each other, but by something far older and vastly more intelligent. The impact of the Black Knight satellite theory on society and media has been profound, not necessarily because of the evidence behind it, but because of the narrative power it holds. In an age saturated with information, where truth often competes with belief, the story of a mysterious alien object orbiting Earth continues to captivate and influence public perception, not just of space, but of authority, science, and the unknown. Media platforms, particularly digital ones, have amplified the Black Knight narrative far beyond the reach of its original proponents. On YouTube, countless videos dissect photographs, highlight radio anomalies, and rehash decades-old reports with updated graphics and dramatic narration. Some of these videos have amassed millions of views, reflecting a public appetite for stories that challenge official accounts. Social media, too, plays a crucial role. Posts speculating about the satellite's true purpose often go viral, accompanied by grainy images, out-of-context NASA footage, and ominous captions. In these digital spaces, repetition breeds belief. An image shared thousands of times becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes part of collective folklore. The mainstream media has occasionally flirted with the story, usually in the form of speculative features or Halloween season listicles, but it is in alternative and independent outlets where the Black Knight thrives. Podcasts, documentaries, and websites dedicated to UFOs and conspiracy theories frequently cite it as the smoking gun of extraterrestrial surveillance. The lack of a definitive explanation, combined with official disinterest or dismissal, only strengthens the appeal. In a world where authority is often viewed with skepticism, any unanswered question becomes fertile ground for speculation. This influence extends beyond the digital realm. In classrooms, teachers report students bringing up the Black Knight when discussing space, aliens, or government secrecy. In entertainment, the trope of a mysterious object silently observing Earth has become a recurring motif, from Hollywood blockbusters to indie sci-fi films. The theory's endurance suggests that it fulfills a narrative need, a cosmic mystery that's just plausible enough to believe, but distant enough to never be disproven definitively. Even within scientific communities, the Black Knight theory has prompted discussions, not about its legitimacy, but about public trust in science and space agencies. Researchers have noted that the persistence of such conspiracies indicates a growing disconnect between expert communities and the general public. When agencies like NASA quickly dismiss anomalies without public-facing transparency or explanation, it fuels the perception of a cover-up. In this way, the Black Knight becomes not just a mystery about space, but a reflection of the communication gap between institutions and the people they serve. The theory also intersects with evolving narratives around artificial intelligence, surveillance, and existential threats. In recent years, the idea that the Black Knight might be more than a passive probe, perhaps an autonomous entity programmed to observe, analyze, or even intervene, has gained traction. As real-world AI grows more sophisticated and opaque, the line between fiction and possibility blurs. The notion of an artificial sentinel quietly orbiting our world taps into modern fears about control, autonomy, and the unknown intentions of advanced systems. Moreover, the Black Knight serves as a cultural touchstone in discussions about humanity's place in the universe. It raises questions rarely addressed by conventional science. What if Earth has always been under observation? What if contact already happened, but we missed it or weren't ready to understand it? These questions, though speculative, inspire a kind of awe that pure data cannot. They invite people to look upward, not with certainty, but with wonder. Ultimately, the Black Knight satellite's influence lies not in what it is, but in what it represents. The enduring hunger for mystery in a world increasingly defined by algorithms, explanations, and cold rationality. It is a myth reborn for the modern era, broadcast across digital airwaves, challenging us to consider that some questions, perhaps the most profound ones, still remain unanswered. Among the more speculative and fringe interpretations of the Black Knight satellite theory are ideas that go far beyond mere surveillance or passive observation. These theories propose that the satellite is not only alien in origin, but actively intelligent, an autonomous machine, or even a biological hybrid, operating with its own form of consciousness. Some suggest that the Black Knight isn't merely watching, but influencing events on Earth in subtle, undetected ways. These ideas, while largely unsupported by scientific evidence, reveal the depth to which this mystery has burrowed into the imagination of those who seek answers beyond conventional paradigms. One fringe theory posits that the Black Knight is a form of ancient alien technology known as a sentinel probe, a concept introduced by physicist and science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke. According to this idea, advanced civilizations seed the galaxy with self-replicating devices designed to monitor intelligent life. Once a species reaches a certain level of technological development, radio signals, nuclear power, spaceflight, the probe activates, either to observe more closely or to initiate first contact. In this view, the Black Knight isn't just old, it's purposeful, part of a galactic system of monitoring and perhaps even interstellar diplomacy. Its long presence above Earth, under this theory, suggests we've been under quiet surveillance for millennia, and that something, or someone, is waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. More radical versions propose that the Black Knight is not alien at all, but terrestrial, and not from our current civilization. These theorists argue that Earth may have hosted advanced societies in the distant past, now lost to time and tectonic shifts. Known as the ancient breakaway civilization hypothesis, it claims that the satellite could be a remnant of a pre-Ice Age technological society, one that escaped a cataclysm and placed the satellite into orbit to monitor what followed. The idea that our true history might be far older and more complex than we know is a recurring theme in fringe archaeology and alternative history. If true, it would mean the Black Knight is not watching aliens, it's watching us, a forgotten species struggling to rebuild what it once had. Even more abstract interpretations approach the satellite from a metaphysical perspective. Some suggest the Black Knight is not a physical object at all, but a manifestation of consciousness or a psychic construct, something that appears only when looked for, existing on the edge of perception. This line of thinking, though difficult to define, taps into theories of quantum observation, multidimensional awareness, and simulated reality. In this view, the Black Knight isn't a machine, but a reflection, an interface between our collective unconscious and the external universe. It may appear as a satellite, but its true nature could be symbolic, adaptive, and tied to human perception itself. Other extreme claims suggest the Black Knight has had a direct impact on human evolution. Some believe it may have been responsible for sudden jumps in cognitive development, ancient knowledge, or spiritual awakenings throughout history. They point to mythological tales of sky gods, fallen stars, and heavenly messengers, drawing connections between ancient texts and the idea of an object in the heavens, providing not just knowledge, but guidance or control. Though mainstream science has dismissed such ideas as pseudoscientific or imaginative fiction, their persistence underscores the depth of human curiosity. The more conventional explanations fail to fully satisfy the mystery, the more room opens up for creative speculation. The Black Knight becomes a blank canvas onto which the deepest questions of existence are projected. Who are we? Where did we come from? Are we truly alone? These fringe theories, while often criticized, perform an essential cultural function. They stretch the bounds of what's considered possible and remind us that mystery still exists, above our skies, within our past, and perhaps within our own minds. Whether seen as a machine, a message, a relic, or a myth, the Black Knight remains a haunting echo of something just beyond reach, always orbiting, always watching. After decades of speculation, analysis, and interpretation, the Black Knight satellite endures not because of a definitive discovery, but because it refuses to be explained away. It exists in a strange liminal space, half science, half myth, where unanswered questions feed a narrative that thrives on ambiguity. Whether it's a thermal blanket caught in the wrong orbit, or an ancient sentinel left behind by a distant intelligence, the Black Knight has taken on a life far beyond its physical presence, real or imagined. Throughout this narrative, we've seen how individual events, Tesla's enigmatic signals, long-delayed echoes, Cold War-era radar tracking, NASA's ambiguous photographs, have woven together to form something larger. Separately, each moment might seem like a curious anomaly, but together they build a framework of belief, strengthened by time, suspicion, and a deep cultural hunger for meaning. This is not just a story about a potential object in space. It's a story about us, our fears, our hopes, and our need to make sense of what we cannot touch or fully understand. If the Black Knight is merely a case of mistaken identity, then it represents a cautionary tale about human perception. It reminds us how easily context can be stripped from an image, how a misunderstood signal can become a message, and how official silence can be mistaken for proof of concealment. In that light, the Black Knight is a mirror, reflecting our own biases back at us. It shows how belief systems can be constructed from gaps in knowledge, and how myth can emerge from the space between certainty and doubt. But if even a portion of the theory holds true, if there is indeed an object of unknown origin in polar orbit, or if Tesla and others genuinely picked up signals from a non-human intelligence, then the implications are staggering. It would mean that humanity is not the only technologically advanced species to operate in this solar system. It would suggest that contact, however silent or long-standing, has already occurred, and it would force a rethinking of everything we know about our place in the cosmos. The Black Knight also serves as a symbol of the ongoing tension between science and secrecy. In an era where institutional trust is eroding, stories like this remind us how fragile our consensus reality can be. When agencies dismiss anomalies without transparent explanation, it leaves space for speculation. When media coverage prioritizes simplicity over depth, complex stories become distorted or lost entirely. The Black Knight stands as a case study in how information, scattered, reassembled, and repeated, can become mythology. Its staying power also illustrates how deeply embedded the search for truth is within the human psyche. Whether we're looking to the skies for signs of alien life, digging into archives for lost knowledge, or simply asking what if, the quest itself is a defining feature of our species. We build telescopes to scan the void. We launch probes to the edges of the solar system. And yet we continue to wonder if something was already here, waiting. In the end, the Black Knight satellite may never be conclusively identified. It may remain a phantom of speculation, an unsolved chapter in humanity's modern mythology. But its role is clear. It keeps alive the spirit of inquiry, the refusal to accept simple answers for complex mysteries. It challenges us not just to look up, but to look deeper into history, science, culture, and ourselves. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Conspiracy Theories Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Conspiracy Theories Podcast on Spotify. Subscribe now.